All right, I think I'm recording now. I'm your host, Dan Stafford, with the Midwestern Geek and Cali podcast. It's Sunday, April 1st, April Fool's Day. April Fools, all right. Speaking of making fools out of people, I just watched a show that I really like, have liked for years. My wife turned me on to it a long time ago. It's CBS Sunday Morning. Now, usually this show is positive and upbeat. And a lot of times they hit on interesting pieces and stuff, and probably a little bit of an older crowd that watches it. But they have a lot of really good art. They have a lot of happy making news, like they're like a good news show most of the time. Occasionally they get into serious subjects, and they do usually a pretty good job of it. But today, I got really irritated with a piece that Ted Koppel did on this show. I'm going to tell you why. If you watch the first video that's in the blog post where I'm sharing this video, www.midwesterngeekandcali.com, go take a look. And I shared the segment, embedded their YouTube video so that you can get a reference for what I'm talking about. The piece ostensibly is talking about what smartphones and internet and social media are doing to our attention span as people. They're worried about it taking away our depth of focus, our ability to concentrate for long periods of time on a particular subject and think things through at a really deep level. And I have to admit, I share the same concerns. I mean, I grew up in the paper world, and I'm a geek. I love the stuff. I transitioned from the paper world to the digital world. I know both sides of it. I know full days of reading a paper book. I know full days of reading article after article or skimming article after article online. I know about flipping through Facebook, post after post after post. I know about pop-up ads. I know about pop-under ads. And they have a point, but here's where they're trying to make April Fools out of all of us. Buried in this piece, not so subtly, that they were talking about old school journalism and accusing the public basically of abandoning traditional journalism and the depth and curation of the narrative that old school journalism did. They're basically saying that it's the wild, wild west out there, and anybody can put up any bullshit that they want. There's a lot more to the story, and this is what traditional corporate media has been so good at for so long, and what pisses me off so much about corporate media. Exactly this kind of thing. They're saying the public abandoned traditional media outlets, or is in the process of abandoning traditional media outlets. I say traditional media outlets abandoned the public. They lie by omission, and they have been for years. Where was the traditional media in the late 1800s when some railroad baron had one of his cronies falsify the summarization of a Supreme Court decision where the Supreme Court decided that corporations are not persons under the law, and somebody that got planted into the court staff rewrote the summary instead of not the full legal decision, the long drawn out, written out legalese that says that corporations are not persons under the law and rewrote that late 1800s summary to say that corporations were persons under the law, and all the precedent and law that followed it was based on the summarization and not the actual decision. Where was the major media then? All right? And that's where their own downfall began. Because Iraq, the Iraq War, do you remember how they were just like gung-ho, let's go? You know, I'm a little too young to be able to tell you about what they were doing back in the Vietnam War. It seems to me I remember some more fair coverage. But by the time the drumbeat for the Iraq War came around, these media companies had bought up, 95% of all the radio stations, newspapers, TV stations in the country. And a few major corporations really had top-level control over all those media outlets. You had maybe 5% independent media in the country. And they have done it for years, lying by omission. They don't tell you about what corporations have done to this country. They don't talk about what's been done to the unions in this country. They don't talk about the stagnation of wages in this country. Not really. If they do, they certainly portray it from a perspective that suits the corporations and billionaires' needs and not the public's needs. Now, I don't like misinformation and lies and falsification. I'm not interested in fake news. I want the real, honest to God truth. But we also have something in our Constitution called the First Amendment. Everybody's all yakking about the Second Amendment right now, but you need to remember the First Amendment, because it doesn't just talk about freedom of speech belonging to the press. That's a convention that was used to suppress freedom of speech of the people. It says that the people have the right to freedom of speech. And that's not all it says. Maybe go read it sometime, because it's probably more important than the Second Amendment. You know, and don't look at me like I'm, some right-wing gun nut. I'm not. I don't go for that stuff. I did my tour of service in the military, and that's it. I don't really feel like carrying guns around. I'm not into hunting and all that stuff. It's not my thing. But by the same token, as a military veteran, I also swore to uphold the U.S. Constitution. Second Amendment's part of the Constitution, so if you don't like it, get it amended out. Otherwise, deal with it. But freedom of speech, that's been foundation level stuff for this country forever. It's not a free country if we don't have freedom of speech. And let me tell you, the internet has given us freedom of speech. It's given us freedom from lies by oppression. And then here comes Ted Koppel with this piece, talking about the fake news and how they're the gatekeepers and the curators of the news. Gatekeepers is right. Corporate gatekeepers. People left the media, the corporate media, because people distrust the corporate media, because they know that they weren't being told the whole story. They were being told just enough to foment a particular narrative without being told all the rest. And it's gotten a lot worse in the last 25 years. Ted Koppel, I'm sorry, but your paycheck comes from corporation. Why should I believe you? So No, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. The corporate media did a disservice, and they fell down on the job when the corporations were consolidating the media. They should have been blaring that from the rooftops everywhere. They should have been making a big damn deal out of it before it was allowed to happen. And now, I'm sorry, you can't trust it. I don't trust any of them. And I'm not the only one. And people younger than me are even less trusting of the old school corporate media. No, we don't buy you. Literally. And there's a reason for that. It's called you fell down on the job. You're not really informing the public fully. It's sad. It's really sad. Because although there was a lot of good journalism done, you didn't stand for the regular people of the country. You stood for the overlords, for the aristocracy, basically, or our modern day version of it. You stood up for them. You didn't stand up for us. Not really. There are too many failures for the working class of this country, and we didn't see not any real help from the traditional gatekeepers and curators of the news. Gatekeepers and curators. Yeah, gatekeepers to what? Keep us the rabble out? Sorry. You don't trust us. Why should we trust you?